he's got this aspect to him that lends itself to a variety of different approaches. And I think that's one of the reasons why Crash is kind of, to this day, he's still so creatively vibrant. It's not necessarily formulaic. Like you could draw Bugs Bunny. There's a set way of doing Bugs Bunny, but with Crash, it's different. He can change. He changes. There's an intriguing aspect to the character that he lends himself to fun. It's just fun to draw Crash.
Charles Zembillas is a character artist and animator, most notable for creating the original designs for legendary gaming mascots Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon. He also provided the original concept art for Daxter from the Jak and Daxter series. Charles most recently worked as a character designer on Crash Nitro Kart in 2002, and he hasn't worked in the gaming industry since. Was it ever your intention to actually work on video games, or was it just something that came out of the blue?
Came out of the blue. Just came out of the blue.
Could you tell me a little bit about how Naughty Dog first approached you to work on Crash? How did that relationship begin?
Well, it wasn't Naughty Dog that approached me. It was a friend of mine. His name is, it was Joe Pearson, who was, we both worked on the original Crash Bandicoot game together. He was doing some sort of a project for Universal, and they contacted him about doing a video game. He didn't have the time to do it. He was involved with this other thing, and he referred it to me. He became the person who was communicating primarily with Naughty Dog. I just kind of went along with it. We had like our initial meeting over at Universal Studios, and one thing led to another, but he was the primary individual, that I was hooked up with. And that's how it started. So, I was fortunate.
The understanding of the PlayStation 1 and how to get the most power out of it was very limited in 1996 when you first started designing characters for Crash Bandicoot. Did the technological limitations ever influence the scope of your designs for the game?
Yes, it did. I think the limitation, like the per character polygon count for PlayStation 1 was 500. So we had to keep everything very simple and very graphic. I don't think when I was working on it, when I was designing, I wasn't thinking entirely that way. I was designing as if I would design for any other project I would be involved with, which at the time was mostly TV. And the more I started to learn about this, the technical aspects of PlayStation, of the original PlayStation, I started to kind of like incorporate that into my process. So we had to keep things simple, is what it really came down to. But by the time we got to Jak and Daxter, the polygon count had gone up from 500 per character to 10,000. So we had like 20 times the resolution. And that's when I started to kind of, realize that I had to like incorporate like girth and thickness, like the thickness of things. If you were looking at Crash's pants, okay, like his trousers. When I was designing him, it was like simple and flat and almost incorporated into the silhouette, just integrated into the silhouette of the character. So that's how it changed. But originally we had to keep things very simple.
Staying with Crash, how did the design of him specifically change visually from the beginning of the process to the final draft that we see now in the game?
From what I was doing, when I design at the very beginning, I like to explore. Like I'll be given some parameters, or I'll be given a direction, and I like to really kind of go all over the place and see how far I can take an idea or a concept and see where it goes. But Joe was working more directly with Naughty Dog, and he was in more direct contact with them, and he was getting input that I wasn't necessarily getting. I was kind of like working out on my own, doing my own kind of thing. And then as we started to kind of like, lock down into a final look for the character, I just kind of like went along with it. And then it became a matter of making the character work and, making him animatable. How are you going to move this guy? And it was difficult. It was a tough character. I mean, I talked with Joe the other day, and Joe's been drawing Crash lately. He's been doing some like commissions. We both kind of, it came up in our conversation, just how tough that character is to draw, to animate and all that kind of stuff. Mostly because you don't have this articulated point. You don't have an area where like Crash's head is separated from his body. I mean, his head and it is basically his body that presents a whole new range of challenges of how to make that character function. So that's how it kind of worked out for me.
You still draw Crash to this day on your blog as recently as a few weeks ago. Why has the character stayed with you 2 decades later?
First of all, it's fun to draw. Crash is a lot of fun to draw. And secondly, I would have to say it's because of the fans. Like, there's a demand for Crash, to see Crash. He's so interesting because, from one drawing to the next, I don't think I draw Crash the same. There's always something different about him every time I draw him. And there's like this flexibility that you have with the look of the character. And it's not just me, I see what other fans and other artists, how they interpret the design of Crash. And it's always something different. There's an intriguing aspect to the character that he lends himself to fun. It's just fun to draw Crash. So
when you did start working on Spyro and doing the artwork for it, what kind of guide did Insomniac give you on what they wanted, what they had in mind for Spyro?
They knew that they wanted to do a dragon-based game, but they really weren't sure what the dragon was going to be. I recall that we were kind of thinking along the lines of doing something where the dragon would be, like a more mature adult kind of creature. As I was, coming up with concept drawings, there was like kind of an evolution of thought. I was kind of like educating the people I was working with about ways of establishing and developing, design appeal in a character. There was kind of a consensus that developed of making the character look cuter. More like childlike as opposed to an adult. Because my original drawings of Spyro, at least some of them included, like a big dragon. He was like a big dragon. Sometimes he'd be kind of bulky, and I was really playing around with all sorts of different attitudes. Like I was doing versions of him where he was kind of a wacky, crazy, insane type of dragon. And eventually we got to the point, and it didn't take very long because I designed Spyro. We came up with I came up with like the final version of Spyro very quickly. While we were going through this whole process, we just kind of thought we'd try doing him with this appealing design, but that he would be kind of bratty, like a bratty little 8 or 9-year-old, that kind of thing. And that's how Spyro kind of came about, like the final look for Spyro.
There's recently been the remaster of the original Crash Trilogy by Vicarious Visions. What was it like seeing that character in like full 4K HD?
Oh, it was great. It was really, really great. And I've worked with that company before. I've worked with Vicarious Visions when we were doing Crash Nitro Kart. So they're great people. And I know that they love Crash. They really, really love Crash Bandicoot. So I know that, I was confident that they were going to do a great job because they had a sincere affection. They really loved Crash. So I was confident that it was going to turn out to be, like something special.
Have you also heard whispers about Spyro the Dragon, its original trilogy, getting remastered as well? Have you also been hearing those rumors, as most gamers have?
Yeah, but I hear it from those gamers. I hear it from the fans. But I don't hear that. I don't hear it from, let's say, Insomniac or other game developers or anything like that. It's like something I might hear through the grapevine, so to speak.
Charles Zimbalist's characters, few as they may be, have proven incredibly popular and adaptable more than 2 decades after their creation. Since 1998, Charles has been teaching the discipline of animation and character design at the Animation Academy in Burbank, California. Talking to Charles, it was obvious he was neither a gamer nor overly regretful of the fact that he hadn't contributed more work to the gaming industry. He's more than happy to continue his role as an educator, nurturing and developing the same kind of young, dynamic talent that he once used himself to create some of gaming's most iconic characters.
Game design is way, way beyond where it was when Joe and I first started with Crash. It's like way, way beyond that. I think what's happening with gaming is really remarkable. It's very, 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 very good. Great artists. The technology is fascinating, and it's just amazing to see, like how far it's come.